reports. Thank you.
Six and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Hey, Director McLaren.
Here.
Director Hernandez.
Here.
Director Calandri.
Here.
Director Martin.
Here.
Director Paris.
Here.
Peter Thompson.
Here.
Arden Wells.
Here.
Craig Parton.
Here.
And I believe on the phone we have Derek Urasic.
I am here.
Okay. All present and accounted for.
Very good. Thank you. Now on item 4, adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So move.
Motion made by Kathy. Second by Brandon. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. Now on public comments. Any public comments today on non-agenda items? Seeing none. Anything on, any hands up? We're on the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items A, B, and C?
So move.
Motion made by Kathy.
I second.
Second by Carolina. Is there any discussion? Any hands up on? If there's no discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion's carried unanimously. Now on item 7, advisory committee report. Dennis? Hurry up, we're coming down through this fast. No.
All right, it's on paper. Thank you very much.
That was a joke, Dennis. Anything important we need to discuss?
Well, I think if reading the report, there were 2 major areas of discussion at the meeting. One was about the administrator, and one was about the model protocols. Also, some comments were made about the bi-monthly sub-area reports, maybe some suggestions for that. So I can wait till that item comes up and explain the report on the administrator, if you want.
Yeah, let's do that. This is okay. Great. Thank you. Brings us to item 8, discussion on Watermaster administrator proposals. Dennis? Sorry, I don't mean to make you sit down.
The wellness program, sure. Between Dan and I, we kind of put these minutes together to reflect the discussion that was held. First paragraph has a list of concerns that were brought up by the various committee members. And also it was noted that while a lot of them may wish to leave things the way they are, that AVAC had not submitted a proposal or declared itself a candidate. So with that in mind, we held 3 votes. First one was just a motion from the floor that was seconded to reject both proposals. And that passed 6-5. Then I asked that we vote more of a vote of confidence on the 2 proposals separately. So the vote on Provost and Pritchard was 2-9, and the vote on RGS was 6-5. And, that's probably about as much color as I can put into this. There's several members here in the audience, maybe online. But as a representative of the whole committee, I think this is represents the discussion pretty well.
Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate it. We're open for public comments now. Julie.
Good morning. I have a letter here that I had received from John Calandry, and he asked me if I would read it again. It was read at the AVEC meeting.
And can you just state your name for those people out in the...
Julie Kyle.
Thank you.
President or Chairman Paris and Board, I have taken the time to review the RFPs and the cost summary of proposal of the applicants for the Watermaster Administrator position. I believe each firm's cost proposals to be an estimation with additional work and additional costs to soon follow. In reviewing the proposed 2-year contracts, Provost and Pritchard will cost the Watermaster approximately $20,000 a month, RGS at $18,800 a month. I'd like to remind you that AVEC has averaged $10,400 a month for their work. I have been impressed with the quality of work and professionalism by the entire AVEC staff. Their expertise cannot be matched as they have been involved with the entire adjudication process and the judgment to follow. I believe AVEC's administrative services to be key to the continued success of the Watermaster. Please consider this letter as confirmation of my desire to retain AVEC as the Watermaster Administrator. Signed, John Calandry. I would just like to say on our behalf and the landowners that call in to us, they're very satisfied with the work that's being done. AVEC is meeting all of our needs in a conservative financial picture, which matters to a lot of us. We don't want to see this grow into some bloated big government project with all these extra projects being proposed, and that is in some of these quotes. So that's all I have to say. If you have any questions, I'm here.
Great. Any questions of Julie? Great. Anyone else? Any hands up? Board comments? Okay. So this matter will be taken up in closed session, and we will do that shortly. So I appreciate the comments, and we'll move on to item 9. Consideration and possible action to approve contract with CJ Brown and Whitney CPA for 2024 audit services.
All right.
Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you, Chair Paris. Pam Clark put together the memo, and she's going to walk through the quote from CJ Brown and the staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Pete. Good morning, Chair Paris, members of the board. On page 30, you'll find a staff report for this item, and that's followed by a copy of their proposal. So CJ Brown and Company, also known as CJ Brown, have been providing professional audit services to the Watermaster since 2019. Staff and the board are in agreement that they've provided credible service for a reasonable fee. And to help support a smooth transition of the Watermaster administrative services in the upcoming year, a proposal was requested from CJ Brown to continue providing those services for a minimum of 1 year. They've provided a proposal for completion of an audit for calendar year 2024, and their proposal is estimating 90 hours of work. They've provided a breakdown of the hours by major area and staff level, and are proposing an all-inclusive cost of $11,700, which includes all of their out-of-pocket expenses. In the table here, you'll see what's been their proposed and actual costs for all audit years since 2019, and then their proposed costs for 2024. I do want to point out that their proposal is based on working with a new administrator, and it does not include the discount that was given in the previous years for committing to a 3-year contract. Any questions so far? And staff is recommending that the board approve the proposal from CJ Brown and Company in the not to exceed amount of $11,700 to provide professional audit services to the Watermaster for the year ending December 31st, 2024.
Thank you, Pam. Any questions of Pam? Any public questions? No hands up? Okay.
Okay.
I think that brings us to, is there a motion to approve the contract with CJ Brown and Company for CPA for the 2024 audit services?
So moved.
Motion by Carolina. Is there a second? Second by Brandon. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion. Any hands up? Okay, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion's carried unanimously. We're on item number 10. Presentation of 2025 administrative budget and administrative assessment rate. Peter?
All right. Thank you, Chair Paris. So staff, myself, Teresa Yates, and Pam Clark put together the budget that you'll see presented today. We believe it covers all costs and also helps with transition and incorporates the maximum of the third-party administrator contracts that we're considering. So do feel like it's a good balanced draft budget, and Pam Clark is going to walk us through the presentation and the budget itself, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Go ahead, Pam.
Thanks again, members of the board. On page 38, you'll find a staff report for this item. Okay, so as Pete mentioned, staff has prepared a draft administrative budget for calendar year 2025. To support this process, we've provided a historical overview, which includes a projected and static budgets for calendar year 2024. You'll see those in the middle column in the staff report in the table. And then the actual revenues and expenses for 2023 calendar year are in the right-hand column, and that's against the new draft proposed budget for 2025 in the left-hand column. So I just want to point out a couple of highlights. There's no budget shortfall or cash flow deficits projected for calendar year 2024. We're in good shape through the end of the year. We are anticipating an increase to the administrative stabilization fund of $247,246. There were a number of assumptions used to estimate the 2025 budget. Key is that we are assuming we're going to continue at the administrative assessment rate currently at $9.50. And then it also assumes there's going to be an AVEX supported transition of the Watermaster administrator in 2025. With that, we have a little over $1 million in total revenue anticipated for 2025, and just under $1 million in total expenses estimated. And with that, we're expecting an increase to the administrative stabilization fund of a little over $57,000. Happy to answer any questions so far. Okay, then moving on, staff is recommending that the draft administrative budget not be approved today, but the budget and administrative assessment rate be placed on the Watermaster Board agenda for consideration and possible approval at the December 2024 meeting.
Okay. Any discussion from the board? Any discussion from the public? Thank you for the presentation, and
Great.
It looks like we will have a better than balanced budget.
Mm-hmm.
So this will be on for December, and I'm sure the advisory committee will weigh in again.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. And now that brings us to item 11, consideration possible action on new production applications. And I think, is that the Arden show?
Yes, it is. Good morning.
And Arden, before you begin, I just wanted to announce to everybody that four of us from AVEC had the real pleasure of seeing Arden do a presentation up at the groundwater. Who are they, Peter? Maybe I'll have
Western Groundwater. Yeah, Arden would be better to stay.
Arden. Where did you give your presentation at?
At the Western Groundwater Congress put on by the Groundwater Resources Association of California.
And it was an outstanding presentation. And Arden also was awarded the Emerging Groundwater Professional Award in recognition of a rising star in California's groundwater industry who contributed significantly to GRA's mission and vision now and into the future. I think we should all give Arden a big round of applause.
Yay, congratulations. We're lucky to have her.
Yes, we are, and very proud of you, Arden. So now it's the Arden Show. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It is really an honor and a pleasure to get to work with y'all. And so moving to new production applications, we only have one application this month. And this is for Eastside Union School District, who is requesting 63.3 acre feet per year for domestic and landscaping use at Eastside Elementary School. So the school has a capacity for up to 800 students and 72 staff members. And so the water use estimate was based off of the maximum occupancy. At this time, there are fewer students than the maximum. And they have historically been pumping water from this property and have been working to get into compliance with the judgment and the Watermaster. So from 2016 through 2023, they produced an average of 43.56 acre feet per year for both domestic and landscaping for the play areas and grassy fields at the school. And then they had well issues in 2021 and have been getting water trucked in. So after the well issues, they were not irrigating the landscaping and all of the fields have gone dusty. And so they've been working to report and are working towards paying the replacement water obligations. And in this application, they included data from a constant rate pumping test, which means that they measured the depth to water during an extended period of producing at their proposed rate. And we were able to analyze this data and find that producing 315 gallons per minute for their proposed production would not significantly decrease water levels in surrounding wells. Our estimate is the closest well is about 1,000 feet away, and production at this rate may reduce the water level by one, maybe a couple of inches, but not significantly. And we also looked at hydrographs at wells, the closest monitoring wells about half a mile away. And we did not see that the surrounding water levels were affected by the past production of 43.6 acre feet per year. And they didn't see a significant increase when that production stopped in the last few years, which makes us believe that this production would not have a negative effect on surrounding water levels. And so they will need to intervene in the judgment and pay those replacement water obligations, as well as continue to pay replacement water assessments for any future production. And with those conditions, we found the potential for material injury to be negligible and recommend this for approval, providing that they successfully intervene and fulfill those replacement water obligations. And the advisory committee also voted to recommend this application for approval. Are there any questions?
Arden, this is Brandon. I just want to make sure I understood. A yes vote on this would require them to be in compliance with all past assessment fees, be current on everything, meet all regulatory requirements before they could start pumping, correct?
I believe so. Angel, has that come up in the discussion that all of the obligations would be fulfilled before any production with the refurbished well?
Yes, Arden, that's correct. So they do need an approved new production application before they can pump. And
that would include successfully intervening and satisfying their replacement water obligations.
And those are spelled out in the resolution.
It is spelled out. Okay, that's what I'm.
You don't even have to weigh in, Craig.
I was going to, well, have you vote first, make a comment.
Okay.
Great.
Well, Director Paris, seeing how I went to school there, I'd like to be the one to make the motion to approve.
Brandon, go ahead.
2453.
Great. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Second by Kathy. Motion made by Brandon, second by Kathy, to approve R 2453. Is there any discussion? Anybody online? Seeing none and hearing none, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution R 2453, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion's carried unanimously.
Before you move on, is there anyone on the line representing, legal counsel representing East Side? Okay, I just wanted to encourage them to call me first before they intervene. The court's got a new clerk and it's a little confusing as a process, so I'll reach out to them.
Craig, I'm familiar with the attorney, so I can go ahead and send that information
Great.
over to you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Angel. Thank you, Craig. Brings us to item 12, consideration possible action on proposed recommendation for model use and sharing protocols. And I believe that's going to be Arden again.
I think I can take that.
Okay.
So per our discussion last board meeting, we have taken a first pass at developing model guidance, including when to run model scenarios as well as when to share the model. We have some guidelines that suggest if a third party would like to use the model to provide what the objective is and the proposed scenario to Todd groundwater so we can improve the use. The model is developed to be a regional model, and we're concerned with some local considerations might not be properly simulated. And so we want to have a chance to weigh into the discussion on how the model should be used in specific scenarios. We also outline in this model guidance when we would use this for material injury. We discussed possible thresholds, but ultimately decided that it would be a case-by-case basis, depending on its susceptibility for subsidence, water level decline, and size of the transfer or new production. We'd look at the application, determine if a model scenario is necessary, and then go to the board, lay out what we think is required, what cost and timeline that would be run under, and then the applicant would be responsible for paying for that model run. It's a first pass that we worked out with the attorney, and we wanted to bring that up for discussion and hear what you all had to say. The model does belong to the Watermaster, and we just want to be part of the discussion to make sure it's used properly.
Thank you, Arden. And Dennis, this was one area that the advisory committee had a lot of discussion about. Can you come up and I know it's in the minutes. You did a good job putting it in the minutes. Part of your wellness program, you need to come up here a few more times. You're looking really good.
As summarized in the memo, there's a series of questions that were presented to Todd Groundwater, and they acknowledged that maybe they haven't thought through all of these as a definite long-term solution. But I think the committee ended up thinking that this was a good starting place. Then it does probably need to change and evolve. So it would be up to the board as to whether you want to have a initial approval and then change it over time, or do some more changes before you would approve it.
Thank you. Any questions of Dennis? No. Okay, seeing none. Okay, board comments? Carolina?
Hi, so Arden, I heard you, I believe I heard you say that you did
discuss this with council. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I was hoping maybe you could tell me, or elaborate, Craig, on what sections of the judgment support this proposal and what legal analysis was performed to do so.
The comments, we had a meeting, at least one phone meeting with the product that you see here. But I've read it. I don't have any problems with it. I think it's consistent with our duty under the judgment. I'm happy to get you the section numbers to guard and protect the safe yield of the basin, to have every implementation tool that we can use as effective Watermaster Board members or their staff to monitor the safe yield, to see if there's material injury going on in the basin that needs to be taken care of. Those are our general duties under this. So that it flows out of that. It's part of our toolkit to do our job as your job as board members efficiently and effectively.
So I think my further question is, there is a proposal that those that are interested in the model would need to go and seek some kind of approval from Todd Groundwater. And I'm not sure what would be the basis of that. My understanding is that arguably this model is public record. So while it's owned by the Watermaster, why would there need to be approval for those seeking to utilize it from Todd Groundwater?
It's a good question. Maureen, you are probably more situated to answer that, but my understanding is that the model is calibrated and the inputs and the model grid are designed for regional issues, not necessarily designed for individual water producers to get a read on what the material injury analysis would be for their production.
Exactly, Craig. And this process, we're not viewing it as a formal approval process, but more of a way to engage Todd Groundwater with the person who wants to run the model, to talk over what the objective is, to see how the model can meet that objective, and if there's additional discretization of the grid that needs to be done, or if a well is not properly located in the right cell, or the layers, really look at it locally and see if there's adjustments to the model that need to be made, or communicate issues with boundary conditions that might occur from the scenario. Just a way to keep technical discussion and make sure everyone is aware of what's going on. We'd like to see how the model is being used and to see any adjustments, partly to keep the version control, make sure we have a basin model, and if there's any changes to that, be aware of that. So it's not so much a formal approval process, but more of a continued discussion to make sure that all parties are aware of the model limitations and how it can be applied in the future.
Thanks, Arden. I think that's really helpful to understand your intent. Although I'm not sure that this would be something that I would be comfortable voting on, because I don't think that's what's articulated. And by Craig's own admission, he has not viewed what is currently in the memorandum. And I'd like to get a better understanding of it, specifically because I want to understand the legal basis of it, but really also because I think you made a good point, Craig, about how, this thought of material injury, right, and the utilization, but I'm not sure how the Watermaster would not be able to do that. In other words, the model could be used for other things besides material injury. I mean, that's true usage. And I think we're coming where many that are trying to understand, carryover and many other things like that are very interested in how that could be analyzed. And I'm afraid that what is presented here is a little bit, maybe a little bit too structured and constrictive for those that want to be able to utilize the model. And, even this model is in fact owned by the Watermaster, but it is a product of investment of many before it came to the Watermaster. And I do think that, to say that there has to be, a screening, and I think I heard you, Arden, that say that, it doesn't require permission, but even the strict screening of the model is a bit concerning to me. And I would like to understand the legal basis, Greg.
Maybe what we do is direct council to do a short memo as to the legal basis for the model and address this issue of what is it being used for? What are we presenting any roadblocks to the effective use of the model for other than material injury analysis?
That would be.
Happy to do that.
Everybody consensus? Good with that?
Yeah.
Also, public water providers, you guys have a meeting. Have you discussed this in your meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is our first run through with this. So,
Yeah.
I think that's a excellent suggestion, and obviously would want to know all the public water providers' input, I guess, after we get the memo and can really digest it. So, everybody's good, no action at this time. Okay, good comments. Thank you, Maureen and Arden. Appreciate that. And we will revisit this. This will be on the agenda next time with a memo from Craig. And then I'm sure it's going to take a little bit more discussion before we get it fine-tuned. That brings us to number 13. Boy, we're moving quickly. Peter, the administrator's report.
All right. Just a brief report. Just going to go over our schedule for the next couple of months. And Holly, if you could advance the slide. Thank you. So one item of business remaining within this month will be to set a special Watermaster meeting date, likely for December. We'll talk about that right after this report. And then want to draw your attention to November, December. So we'll be looking at negotiating a scope and fee if the Watermaster selects a candidate to move forward in the process for administrator. We will also be bringing back, we will also be sending out a replacement water request letter to the AV state water contractors. So after all the billing and the production reports have been compiled this year, we now will have a amount and like a parceled out to each of the AV State Water Contractor Association groups, amount for them to provide replacement water. And that request will go out next month. We're going to have the review of the fee schedule and review of new production policy. So I apologize, staff did not have the time to put together a robust discussion on new production policy, and we intend on doing that at the next meeting. And then we will be seeking approval for replacement water rates, the administrative assessments for 2025, and the finalized budget for 2025. So that's our look ahead at the November, December meeting. Holly, if we could move to the next slide. The last thing that in my report is we just need to settle on a date. Angel reached out with some available dates. Both of them, essentially, we found that there was one primary board member wasn't going to be available at one or the other of the 10th and 16th, but there were alternates available. So these are the dates that are remaining viable, but we wanted to bring it to the board for a final decision so that we can set that date and move forward.
So I'll jump in. I'm only available on the 10th, not the 16th. But placement here for chair, and I have a alternate. So, but I would like to attend that meeting. There's a lot coming up with that.
I will also speak to the fact that I have an issue with the 16th. You're getting close to some seasonal travel time for a lot of people. This is going to be a very important meeting. We need to make it as available to everybody as possible. I think with that being said, December 10th is the wisest decision to make for this next meeting, just to allow for as much participation from John Q. Public as possible.
The 10th for me is good.
That's good.
Both work for me.
I'm fine.
You're good. Okay. Consensus the 10th is our meeting. You don't need a vote for that, or you
No,
don't vote?
consensus is fine.
Okay, so, any public comment or anybody else? Any hands up? Okay, so our December meeting will be December 10th, and then are we having a November meeting? It's just the December meeting?
Just the December.
So we're gonna be dark in November, and December 10th will be our next meeting.
Correct.
Okay, very good.
All right, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Peter. Watermaster Engineer Report, Arden and Maureen.
Thank you. Let me share my slides real quick and alrighty. All right, can y'all see this okay? Whoops, it still says September, but can y'all see this slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So real quickly, we have our update of our new production and qualified small pumpers. The only difference was 1 acre-foot per year that was approved in last month's meeting. Maureen shared a bit about the memo, which was really our model update. So I'll go straight to section C and just provide a bit of a brief summary for the biannual sub-area committee meeting. And so Maureen attended the advisory committee meeting last week for the biannual sub-area committee meeting. And this meeting is really just the time where the Watermaster engineer is at the advisory committee meeting, and we share a bit about the status of water use, transfers, and carryover water by each sub-area. And so we included those slides in the packet for all interested parties to review, but I'm not going to walk through all of them in detail just because of time. But most of the data that we presented was from the annual report. So this has already been presented. We do include updated volumes of transferred water broken down by each sub-area through September 2024. So I will briefly share those numbers just to keep the board in the loop. So this is looking at the one-time transfers of carryover water current year production rights that occurred in 2024. And so a few things to point out. On the difference column, that is showing the amount of transfer rights produced that has been transferred to each sub-area. And so in Central Antelope Valley sub-area, we note a transfer approved, a total approval volume of 9,250 acre feet. And much of this is coming from the transfer of 10,000 acre feet from Five Lions to AVEC earlier this year. And we note that the Five Lions transfer, their water was originally listed as having no extraction point. Prior to that, it had been water from the Central Antelope sub-area. So that's why they're large volumes for Central Antelope sub-area and for no extraction point. I also want to point out that 1,570 acre feet were approved for use in Southeast sub-area. And I think this is important to just note that there is more transfer water that is being approved and used in the Southeast sub-area. And this is important to keep in mind when we're thinking about recharge and replacement water assessments, and noting that we do have these pilot projects in the Southeast sub-area that will contribute recharge to this area. We also note that there was water that was transferred out of the West Antelope sub-area. So if we put that into perspective with, through all of time, the total transfers in by each sub-area, we see a lot of water has been transferred out of the Central Antelope sub-area, but the bulk of this is related to the LA County Sanitation District to Five Lions, long-term transfer of 22,800 acre feet. And that is also reflected in the amount of water that has been transferred to parties with no extraction point. Is there a question?
Yes. You said that the transfer from Five Lions to AVAC, that was central sub area to central sub area.
So in this, it's being marked as central or Five Lions to AVAC. If you look at the long term, because the water was transferred from the central Antelope sub area to Five Lions, and then with the AVAC transfer, that was from no point of extraction to central Antelope sub area. But long term, it really is from central Antelope sub area to central Antelope sub area.
So there's no difference to the central sub area basin. It's staying within the same basin.
That's correct. Yes. It just sort of went in between parties that did not have an extraction point identified. And so you can think of the no extraction point row as a little bit of a waiting room for carryover water.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. The sub area that has had the largest net transfers to it, once again, has been the southeast sub area, and the West Antelope sub area and Willow Springs sub area have had the largest net transfers of water proposed for use out of basins. And then finally, if we look at permanent transfers through September 2024, we note that the only changes that have occurred in 2024 are the 51 acre feet per year that were bought as investments from the Central Antelope sub area in 2024. And overall, we do see some net differences of about 200 acre feet per year for Central Antelope sub area, West Antelope sub area, and areas with no extraction points. But overall, there is a pretty good balance for permanent transfers by each sub area. So that's all that we have to present for this meeting, but we're happy to answer any questions or go over any of the other information that was presented at the sub area meeting.
Any questions? Any comments? Anybody online? Hands up? No? Okay, very good. Thank you, Arden. And are you done, Arden?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
I always cut you off, so I want to make sure.
No worries.
Thank you. And that brings us to our general counsel's report. Craig.
We have 5 closed session matters which cover all the things that I need to report on, pending appeal, potential litigation, some other things. The only thing that I want to bring to the board's attention is a letter was sent in by legal counsel for Clan Keith, what's known under the judgment as a non-stipulating party. And they indicate that they have sounds like potential real estate transaction where they would convey away some of their property, but want to retain the water rights. And they've asked for, I believe we suggested that they go to the advisory committee first, get some reaction to that, and then we'll see if the board wants to make any weigh in on the subject. It's not, we got this information about the request that goes to the advisory committee and potentially you after the agenda was done. So there was no way to get their letter in. So we advise that it go to the advisory committee, the attorneys on that committee, appreciate them weighing in with any comments, and we'll have it as an item that the board can either act on or not act on. My concern with this is not the legal position they take, but I don't believe the board should operate to give advisory opinions on what the judgment allows. We have to have an actual controversy before we weigh in. So I'm cautious about the board entertaining a potential legal interpretation relating to a real estate transaction. But you'll see the letter, it'll go to the AC, and then at the December 10th meeting, you can be pleased with what the AC says and leave it at that, or make comments if you want, or act in any way you see fit.
If I heard you, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. They're interested in selling the property and keeping the water.
Selling part of the property and retaining their water rights. So I felt it's a big enough kind of question that the AC ought to give us their input, and I'd like to weigh in on it also.
So this will be placed on the agenda for next meeting. We'll go
Correct.
to the advisory committee and they will discuss it. They'll come back to us for further discussion. Is that the
Correct.
plan?
Correct.
And everybody good with that? Okay.
And that's
Anything
my
else,
report. That's it.
Okay. That brings us to board members' requests for future agenda items.
I can notate here, recommended future action for consideration. The advisory committee requests the board consider possible action on invoicing new production owners and including adjusting application fees to cover administrators' AVAX time and revising the application to state the applicant's obligation to keep their address current with the Watermaster.
We plan on having that. The next
We'll put that on. Okay, great. And then obviously the model use will come back.
Right.
This letter that was discussed by Craig will come back. Any other future agenda items? At this time? Okay, is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Motion made by Kathy. Second by Brandon. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to go in closed session, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We will begin closed session at 11 o'clock.
We're
going live. You got- Okay, we are back from closed session. And, Craig,
There's no reportable action.
there's no reportable action. At this point, meeting's adjourned.